Let's go.
Welcome to the SOULFAM Podcast, where we expand your personal universe. I'm Diana Marquetta, and in each episode, SOULFAM co-founder, co-creator Lexi Strummer-Solden and I interview the world's most rising and longtime experts in consciousness, spirituality, entertainment, healing, and science. From Earth's dimensions and dimensions way, way beyond. On the SOULFAM Podcast, our frequencies are high and your heart chakras will open as these powerful voices of today share cutting-edge research, profound experiences, and valuable knowledge for your world in this out-of-this-world, thought-provoking, envelope-pushing interviews that could only take place right here on the SOULFAM Podcast.
Welcome to the SOULFAM Podcast. We are so thrilled today to welcome Manuel Casanueva, who is a friend. He is also a teacher at the Universidad Adolfo Ibáñez, I hope I said that right, in Chile. And Manu, you and I are classmates at 22 Teachings. We'll just get that out of the way right now. You just wrapped up a class through 22 called Coptic for Mystics.
Hey Lexi, hey Diana. I'm so happy to be here. I've been a fan forever. So I'm so glad.
That's
yeah.
So nice. You don't have to say that. You don't have to say that, Manu.
Totally a fan. So I'm just like, I can't believe I'm here. So it's great. Yeah, I just finished teaching a class at 22 Teachings called Greek for Mystics. So it's basically an exploration of ancient Greek. So it's much more than a linguistic journey. It's sort of a profound spiritual exploration as well. So ancient Greek serves as a bridge to the past. So it connects students with spiritual wisdom, right? So this language is infused with mysticism. And I think it's a key to unlock esoteric knowledge and spiritual insights. So it's like a two-part class. The first one is very linguistic oriented, meaning you have calligraphy lessons, and I teach you how to pronounce the alphabet. So that's the first part. And the second part is studying the goddess Athena, and more specifically, an Orphic hymn of the goddess Athena. So it's a 22 Teachings class. So, the expectations are high. So I brought this ancient text so that students could read it only after 6 weeks of class. And it worked. So it was just a fantastic exploration.
I'm really sad I missed it. Did you say you brought an Orphic egg? Yes. Or no. What was the?
Orphic hymn. So it's
Okay.
It's a poetry written by the Orphic tradition, which was a religion in ancient Greece.
I don't think I knew about that. Is it just that many of us have a basic understanding of Greek mythology in some of the names of the maybe a lot of people? What is I never heard about that before. Is that just specifically a mystic branch?
Yeah. So that's okay, Lexi. Everybody knows ancient Greece because of the Olympic gods. So that was the official religion. So that's what everybody knows about Greece. But there are many other different religious movements in ancient Greece. You have to think that it's a civilization that spreads throughout centuries. So a very old tradition is called the Orphic tradition, which was born around the 5th century BC. And they have this legacy of poems that were used in their spiritual tradition for initiation and just practicing magic. And all these texts have always been available. So there are a lot of translations and they're quite accessible. So I chose this hymn for Athena because it was accessible and because the goddess Athena it's a very important figure in ancient Greece to understand the worldview, right? And what was conceived to be the highest virtue, right? So yeah, I brought this class that was integrating both learning how to read ancient Greek with an actual text that you would recite at the end of it.
Wow. So you've been teaching for a while now,
Oh,
right?
yes, more than 20 years.
Yeah. So did you use different strategies with your 22 teachings adult mystic students than you use with your college students, or did you change things, or did you sort of just approach it as a teacher and go from there?
Well, yes and no. I mean, as a teacher, I think the best way to teach is just being transparent and honest. So it's not like I wear two different hats. I'm always the same person. So I students in college are often geared towards obtaining tangible outcomes that contribute to their career trajectories. So there is a syllabus and there is a specific outcome that you need to achieve, right? You're teaching a skill more likely, but the students of the mystic students, right? Um, it's more holistic. So we focus more on personal growth, spiritual enlightenment, and harmonization of the mind, body, and spirit. So the teaching is more adaptive and it meets each student where they are in their spiritual journey. And to me, really teaching 22 students and magis is fantastic because you do it out of passion. So there's no better student than the one that loves what the student does, and it's doing it and pursuing it because they have a passion for it. So they go, well beyond your expectations as a normal teacher. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I think Diana had a question about Chile, if they're more open to this esoteric stuff than the US, or you had a question there, Diana, I think.
So academically speaking, I would think that at least in the United States, most of the universities and schools would not be opening and accepting about something that's related to magic necessarily. History might be fine, but magic itself or a teaching that relates to that is probably not super acceptable at the Board of Regents. But how is it different at your university? Is it different as an atmosphere in your community in general?
Well, so Chile's cultural landscape is uniquely diverse. We have at least 10% of the population being Mapuche. So that means that we have a religion, based on nature that coexist with the Catholic religion that is mostly the official religion in Chile. So you would be surprised how diverse and tolerant we are. I know that South America has a reputation of being, like this very conservative machista society, but Chile is very progressive. Just as an example, our government is all the important positions have to be divided half and half. So half women, half men. So women do achieve positions of power in politics here in this country. We have stuff like, and sorry, I'm getting off a little bit out of track, but just to give you a context.
That's what we do here.
Yeah,
we like to do that.
Let's do it. So, for instance, plastic bags are illegal. You can't use any plastic, or animals are very protected in this country. You cannot touch an animal or you go to jail. And so it is like the LGBT community is protected. You cannot, openly discriminate against anyone. So Chile has advanced tremendously in terms of diversity in comparison to the region. South America is a very big continent and it has many different countries. So at least in the southern cone, which is, I would say, Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, and Chile, is more of an open society. So People don't really understand what the Western mystery tradition is. It's not very common to practice it, but since we have a very, active religious, uh, traditions living here, it's okay. It's not terrible,
Hmm. Interesting. So, and is
Yeah.
there a deep interest as well?
Oh, yes. You have to think that, I mean, just look at our neighborhood. We have Machu Picchu, Easter Island. We have, spiritual, I would say spiritual portals. Just Lake Titicaca in Bolivia. These are really magical places and where nature is raw, right? We're not heavily
Mhm.
industrialized like the Northern Hemisphere. Here you have contact with nature and you can understand what these religions are about and people that practice these religions. I mean, when you go to Peru and certain parts of Bolivia and the highlands, it's like traveling 500-600 years into the past. So,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
yeah, we're very connected to nature and just to different spiritual streams of, you know?
This wasn't on the questions. I was going to say, Manu, I'm so amazed and thrilled that it's such a progressive, amazing uh, community and place that you're living. Because when you and Rosario were in town, we got into a discussion with another classmate, and I think you had said something like, until the age of 10, the only thing you'd seen on TV was the Thriller music video. I mean, you grew up in different, something
Yes.
a way different
Yeah.
era.
So the history of Chile is quite fascinating. We had a dictatorship in the 70s. It was basically the Cold War, which was very hot in South America. It was communism versus capitalism. So there was a dictatorship that was a capitalist dictatorship against a communist state that had been there before. So I was born in 1980, and the dictatorship lasted up until the 90s, the early 90s. So my first 10 years, I did not know what democracy was. And there were like two official TV channels, and one of them played Thriller by Michael Jackson all day long. So I only knew democracy when I was 12 or 13, not exaggerating. So, and once we hit democracies, a lot of changes started happening very fast. So the country that it was in 1980 is nothing what it is in 2024, luckily.
Well, maybe we have hope then over here in the US.
Yes, you have hope. I mean, there are countries where you can get sick and the government is obliged to give you medicine. It's not an alien thought, it's not like a wrong thing. You have rights, housing, health. So it's good for someone in the US to travel abroad and to see that, there are different systems that, more or less work to a degree, but that there is you can get sick in another country. And I think that you guys deserve that. You guys pay taxes and work hard, so there should be a little bit more rights, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you do teach international relations, is that correct?
In within international relations, so I teach basically students that are from abroad, and they come in an exchange. So I get to teach classes like Latin American identity. So to answer your question, Diana, through Latin American identity, I have this chapter in the class that talks about the indigenous communities. So I do talk about magic under that lens in class, and that's okay. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, interesting.
So it's
Are there any
yeah, it's no.
specific tribes that you talk about? I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, no, it's we talk in general about the principles of the indigenous religions. So when it boils down to it, they all have certain similarities, right? And all religions in the world have similarities. So I try to talk about those common aspects of the indigenous religions in South America uh, that basically talk about reciprocity as the fundamental way of life. So we are highly individualistic in our cultures, but these cultures are the opposite. Self-realization is, in a way, also a collective realization. And I think that with the practice of magic, I've understood that, and that's Lexi's my classmate, so we're studying together. And we found this little group of hermits, because all magi's are hermits. We're all in our little houses, hidden away from the world. But when you practice magic, you start realizing it is an expansive concept. Once there's change within and you find more or less kind of a peaceful stance in your life, that radiates, I think, to other people. So the cool thing is finding other hermits that are willing to form a community, being hermits. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. We're all just hermits with our books.
So you have to agree or disagree with me.
So if you don't mind, I'm very curious. I've spent a lot of time in Peru and had some interesting experiences on Machu Picchu and more on the mountain right next to it, as well as Lake Titicaca. But is there an overriding, there's so many interesting principles there, and I feel very at home in those areas. Is there something in particular that you feel, I'm just curious what the overall teaching is, perhaps that's what I should ask, about the magic of nature and tribes. And maybe this is something that you're also teaching in the context of the work you're doing with 22 teachings. I'm not sure, or if those are two separate things.
To answer your question, the secret teaching of Huayna Picchu and Machu Picchu, I think it's water. So they worship the mountain, which is called Apu, the god Apu. And the Apu brings forth the water. So when you're in Machu Picchu and it rains, you see that this whole city is a big machine that drives water from the top to the bottom to the citizens. It's just a very special place where the Andes collides with the Amazonian basin. So it's the jungle, and it's, you have to, you understand, Diana, because you were there. So you have to be there to understand.
Yes.
But I think when you go to these sacred locations, it's all about the elements. It's always about the elements and the connection to life, which is water, if you ask me. That's my teaching about it. And does it connect to ancient Greek? Well, I think all religions connect. It's just different expressions of the same, of connecting with divinity. So, however you want to call God, you want to call he, she, it, or chemistry, whatever makes you connect to the universe, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. At 22, with all of our fellow hermit, wizard, nerd classmates, we somewhat recently wrapped up a very long group magical working. I think it was 1.5 years. But we did just a very traditional Kabbalistic working, which was the Shem HaMephorash, which is the 72 names of God. And Manu, you had a very important weekly role in that, and you did a lot of research into the Psalms for that magical working. And we were wondering if you could talk about that experience.
Oh, yes. Let's talk about it. So first, we have to mention a great magi, which is our teacher, that is Naha Armadi. And Naha trusted me with helping her in this work of the Shem HaMephorash. And it was basically, to each name, you have connected a verse of the book of Psalms. So there are 150 Psalms, which are poems or songs that are mostly attributed to King David. But there are from different authors, of course, and they're all written in Hebrew. And basically, what I had to do was to scan the book of Psalms letter by letter to find these verses that needed to have a specific formula in order to be attached to a specific name. I don't know if that is easily understood. It's a very complicated thing, but not any verse, not every verse in the Psalms was useful for us, just those that had very specific structures. So I had to scan the entire book of Psalms letter by letter and find them. And it was just, it changed my life, to be honest. And the Shem Hamforash, the 72 names of God, it's a work that we did as a lodge in 22 teachings. So there's many people involved. And of course, in magic, what I've come to understand in magic is that there is a need for silence when it comes to magical operations, not because you want to be selfish, but because these are very long, many years go into this work. So, well, there will be a time where all these verses and these names are going to be revealed, but until then, it's still a work in progress. So I don't want to reveal too much about the Shem Hamforash, but I brought us a verse of a psalm that is the first psalm of the book of Psalms. That is one of my favorite. I don't know if you want to listen to it in Latin.
We do. We would love for you to read it.
Okay, so I'm going to read it in Latin. Then I'm going to give you the translation and just a little bit of an interpretation. Okay. So this is from Psalm 1, and this is verse 3. Okay, so just at the beginning. In Latin, it says, Et erit tamquam lignum quod plantatum est secus de cursus aquarum, quod fructum sum dabit in tempore suo, et folium eius non defluet, et omnia quamque facet prosperabuntur. And he shall be like a tree, which is planted near the running waters, which shall bring forth its fruit in due season, and his leaf shall not fall off, and all whatsoever he shall do shall prosper. So really, it's about the trees by water sources, right? So they're typically robust and healthy because they have this constant supply of nourishment. So similarly, the righteous person is planted or in a life-giving relationship with God. So this person draws spiritual sustenance from God's teachings, just like the tree draws water from the stream. Then it says, which shall bring forth its fruit in due season. So fruit bearing is a sign of health and vitality in a tree. So in a spiritual sense, this represents the visible outcomes of a righteous life. And in due season suggests that these outcomes are not always immediate, but come in God's timing. And then it says, and his leaf shall not fall off. So leaves that do not wither symbolize endurance and resilience, right? And then it says, and all whatsoever he shall do prosper. So it's not necessarily a promise of material prosperity, but rather a broader understanding of prosperity in all aspects of life. So it goes, I'm going to read it again. It says, et erit tamquam lignum quod plantatum, es secus de cursus aquarum, quod fructum suum dabit in tempore suo, et folium eius non defluet, et omnia quamque facet prosperabuntur. And he shall be like a tree which is planted near the running waters, which shall bring forth its fruit in due season. And his leaf shall not fall off, and all whatsoever he shall do shall prosper. So isn't it beautiful as an invitation to the book of Psalms?
It's so beautiful. Thank you, Manu.
Oh, you're welcome.
I just think that's very telling for our times. And I'm sure many of us are feeling unrooted at this time and unsure of what's about to happen. So that's, it's very poetic, but it just feels very true at the moment.
Yeah. And I think it's to practice magic. What nobody tells you is that you need a lot of faith to practice it, an unwavering faith. I think that's sort of in whatever you do in magic, you put your heart first. And what I love about the Psalms is that they're really vulnerable. Like once you get used to the language that is very old, of course, and if you're able to access this text without prejudice and let it speak to you, you will see that every single human emotion is reflected in the book of Psalms. So the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I was surprised by the Psalms because of that there is a space for human existence in the Torah, right, in the Bible, and just an invitation to people to just think that, the Bible is the most important book still and the most read. So there must be something to it, right? So my advice is to access it as ancient texts and ancient technology uh, that aims to help you live more peacefully and just go beyond, because these are ancient texts. They're thousands of years ago. So, it's not in the present and with all the issues that we have, right? So as an invitation with an open heart and with no prejudice to access these texts. And as Magi's, we should be able to access the source and not sort of in an English expression, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, cut the middleman, right? As Magi's,
Yeah.
we're able to access the source and just uh, form our own opinion and not just base our knowledge on quotes, right? So that's what I'm trying to do in Greek for Mystics and the upcoming Latin for Mystics, is to teach people that they are able in under a month to access these texts. Of course, you're not going to be able to understand them or fully translate them, but at least being able to recreate them through sound and have a connection that way, uh, because people are very scared of language learning, as it would take forever. But these are dead languages. You don't have to speak them. They're present in texts and you can use a dictionary. So it's much easier than what people would think.
Latin for mystics sounds amazing. I didn't know you were going to be teaching that.
Oh, yes.
Do you have any details you can share on that?
Ooh, I have a lot of juicy details about Latin. It's going to be, I'm going to bring forth a couple of Shem Hamfurash verses that were translated to Latin. So I will teach the ancient Latin pronunciation, right? And as it's supposed to be pronounced. And then we will recite some verses of the Shem Hamfurash in Latin. My favorite ones, the ones that I think are really, really effective.
Oof. Okay, I have some big questions for you, and
Yes,
all of this ties in somehow. So I remember taking a semester of Latin, and what I could say at the end was Marcus cadet in piscinam, which is like Marcus falls in the fish pond, right?
Yeah.
I guess. Was that right? Or like something about somebody asked sub arbore, or ubi sabubi, always wear underwear. What are some of us gonna be able to, be honest, some people really are not gonna be able to speak Latin the way it's supposed to be spoken.
Oh, I did it with Greek, and my students were able to recite reading from the alphabet of Greek without mistakes. So I was very impressed. That's why 22 Teachings is so special. So provided that Latin has the same alphabet that we do, it's about tackling the right pronunciation of vowels mostly, because English has a lot of vowel sounds, and Latin has less. So I have to bring you to understand how to pronounce sounds in a more approximate way to Latin. So there is some technicality to it. There is a science to it, phonetics, right? But once you understand that the mouth is an instrument and consonants and vowels are just instructions as to how to place your mouth and tongue to pronounce a sound, you can do it. We speak all the time. We're speaking everything. So we know how to do it, right? There's no reason to be scared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the right way to say Marcus cadet en piscinam? What is the correct pronunciation?
Marcus? Can you say it again? Let me write it down.
Marcus.
Okay.
So here's the bad American. Marcus cadet en piscinam. I'm trying to say Marcus fell in the fish pond or he falls in the fish pond.
Codit. So you have the O in English is O. So it has like a U sound in it. While in Latin, it's just a raw O. So I want you to place your lips in a circle and then say O. Go ahead.
Oh.
There you go. Codit.
Oh. Codit.
There you go. You know, it's that simple, guys. Look, I want people not to be afraid of language because it's fun, it's simple, and you can practice it.
Is Latin one of the basics of magic texts?
I think for the West, Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. And Latin is still used in the Vatican for liturgy. So, So there's so much power. There's so much power in the egregore, I think, of Latin.
Unfortunately, this interview was cut short. We hope you'll stay tuned to Manuel Casanueva and his elegant explanation of Latin and Greek as the very basis of magic. We appreciate your love, your interest, and we hope you'll continue to explore your own personal universe. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the SOULFAM Podcast. Be sure to tune in to every episode where we dive into a different rabbit hole of the known and unknown to empower you in conscious living and exploration of the greater universe. We hope you leave each episode with a little stardust in your hair and inspiration in your heart. With love from your SOULFAM.